Let me introduce myself. So I'm Tasha. I'm from Tuklas, and I'll be your host for today. I'll be helped by my friend Kate Lim. She's here too, and she'll be helping me host. We're both from Tuklas, and this show or talk, uh, we would like to thank the Nayong Filipino Foundation for helping us put this up, for hosting this online show. And let me just introduce them. The Nayong Filipino Foundation started a series of multi-sectoral consultations called Umpukan sa Nayon last December 2019. It was originally meant to enable public participation for developing programs for the NPF and 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 live-in conversations among stakeholders. So the first of the series allowed us to learn from the wisdom of the Kitanglad Council of Elders. That's an indigenous group in Mindanao. And Nayong Filipino will be inviting leaders and enablers of arts and cultural networks for this year's Heritage Month. A series of NPF Umpukan will be conducted. So this second one for Heritage Month and part of NPF's mission to celebrate cultural heritage, Filipino diversity, and creativity as a social and economic force for national development. So, by the way, it's Heritage Month. Just a reminder for the others, it's Heritage Month in the Philippines, and Nayon Filipino has continued Umpukan sa Nayon. So, thank you for that. And then my friend Kate will be sharing with us who Tuklas is.
Hello. Hi.
Use your
Hi
mic.
everyone. Okay. Is it? Hi everyone. I'd like to greet everyone a blessed afternoon and thank you for joining us in this discussion on archaeology and cultural education in this changing time. So just a short background, we conceptualized this informal educational session as a supplementary material alongside the other efforts of the heritage groups that has been going on locally and internationally. In the Philippines, archaeology is a small yet thriving in both the scientific and heritage community. And with that, Tuklas and Nayong Filipino would like to bring this discipline closer to our hearts and homes through this Umpukan session. So, Umpukan is like a group gathering in Tagalog. Before we start, I would like to take this opportunity to share with you about our organization. Tuklas is actually a nonprofit organization that centers on archaeology as a basis for strengthening heritage literacy in the Philippines. It is mainly composed of archaeologists and heritage advocates that apply community education, exploration, and engagement approaches to bring about yesterday's stories and learn from them. So we currently have like three main programs, namely uh, wait a minute, namely the sandbox session. Let me share a nice screen. Yeah, so sandbox session. So these are interactive workshop and classroom transformation activities. Archaeotrails or mobile learning alternative spaces and community links. And uh, these uh, these programs build on the concept of shared heritage to further cultural regeneration and sensitivity for heritage protection and nation building. So in this changing time, we are faced with this challenge. So given the inherent approach to archaeological and heritage learning as experiential and community driven, how do we still engage people and educate on our heritage when its link or relevance to a crisis like this seems to be distant? So for this afternoon's Umpukan session, we are joined by our esteemed local colleagues and neighbors from Southeast Asia who would share on the work they do before and during this pandemic, the experiences in their country, and moving forward plans. And hopefully at the end of this talk, we would be inspired and generate more innovative ideas on how we can collaborate and communicate interesting lessons from our archaeological heritage. So please stay until the end of the talks. So back to you, Tash.
Thank you. Okay, so since Kate already mentioned that we have friends also from Nayong Filipino, I would like to introduce Patricia Panganiban. She will be helping us with reviewing and reacting to the talks that our speakers will be sharing. So she's also an archaeologist, and she's a chemist working with the Nayong Pilipino Foundation, primarily with the artifacts in their collection. And she received her master's in archaeological science from the University of Évora in Portugal. So, hi, Patricia.
Hi.
All right. With that, are we ready? So, I would like to introduce our first speaker. His name is Noel Hidalgo Tan. He's actually also Filipino, but he's from Singapore and he's currently working in Bangkok. He's the senior specialist in archaeology in CMAO SPAFA, and he's also the web administrator of the Southeast Asian Archaeology .com website. He oversees capacity building projects for the advancement of Southeast Asian archaeology and is the managing editor of the SPAFA Journal. His primary research specialty is in the rock art of Southeast Asia, and graduated with an MA from University Sens Malaysia and a PhD from the Australian National University, ANU, and he also runs the Southeast Asian Archaeology News blog. So hi, Noel. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Hi, everyone. Oh, really nice to see everybody today.
Before you share, I would just like to tell our viewers that some of our talking points, basically our friends from Southeast Asia will be sharing the status of their archaeological or heritage work before this pandemic happened. And then of course you will be sharing how things are now in your country, work, or organization, and what are the forward moving plans given this pandemic, and what are the opportunities, comments, recommendations for archaeologists and heritage workers, or how can we take part in cultural education during this pandemic. So Noel, take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Tasha. I'm going to be quite casual in my presentation, and even by saying presentation, it doesn't sound casual already. But I promise you that I did this in half an hour ago, so it's really, really casual. Let me just pull up my photos. So like how Tasha said, I work for the Regional Center of Archaeology and Fine Arts based in Bangkok. And I oversee the archaeology programs for the center. And in this year, we've been planning to hold 2 activities that's been held up by COVID. In the bottom left, we had a program by one of my colleagues that was supposed to be in Brunei in March this year. And of course, March was when everything started to blow up. And so that's been postponed. And then next month, we were meant to hold a advanced field training in bones conservation here in Thailand. Again, that's been postponed to next year. So currently, we've postponed all our physical programs for next year. Hopefully, we will be able to hold them next year. And since the middle of March, which feels like a long time ago, even though it's only really been just a couple of months, we have been working from home. First, we were planning to work from home till the end of April, but we've extended it to the end of this month. But I've been coming to the office every now and then. In fact, I'm in my office right now. And that's where I've been. I mean, that's what I've been up to for most parts. Website-wise, I know a lot of you follow my website, and I've been doing various things to keep everybody busy while they're at home. So I've put together lists of online lectures, I've put together coloring pages, put together lists of virtual tours that you can go around in Southeast Asia. And I think a lot of you enjoy those, so I'm very happy that those lists are being paid attention to. Dealing with the new normal now for us, I'm actually happy to just be here to talk to everybody because I really don't know how to deal with the new normal currently. It's quite overwhelming sometimes. We were just before we were locked down, we were on the cusp of preparing our new slate of programs for the next year, the next 2 years. And then we've had to redo everything because of COVID-19 and having to figure out what to do now that we can't have any physical or on-site activities for the next year. So at least for this year and maybe even next year, we aren't able to hold any physical on-site activities. For small-scale ones, like we used to hold lectures in Bangkok, or we would have workshops and we would fly everybody to a particular location. But travel is impossible for the foreseeable future. And so we don't know when travel is going to happen again. I'm sure everyone has been going online for meetings, and we've been holding our online meetings in SPAFA. We do everything on Google in SPAFA, so we've got Google Meetups in our system. I've taken part in more than a few Zoom meetings in the last few weeks, and I'm sure everyone's done the same. And I'm sure everyone is also feeling a bit like me, feeling a bit Zoom fatigued. So it is just trying to get used to things as they are now and seeing how they go forward. In Bangkok, we've been quite fortunate. Our rates have been relatively low compared to the rest of the world, and in fact, over the last few weeks, we've begun to open up. So over the weekend, we've had our malls open up already, and it's kind of nice to be able to be walking out normally, although people are still wearing masks and taking temperature. We're still encouraged to not go out as much as possible, and we are, at least in SPAFA, we're still working from home, and we're coming into the office in staggered hours, staggered days. Currently, I'm more interested in just hearing from everybody what everyone is doing. I know there's a lot of online seminars going on now. There's a lot of online learning available now, probably more than ever before, which is nice. Before, it used to be the case where you have to be in a certain city to hear a talk, but more and more. Last week I was at a colleague's talk in Perth. A few weeks before that, I was meeting up with all my friends in the rock art world, and we had a series of online meetings. So much so that we had to have 2 meetings of the same sort because we were all spread out throughout the world in different time zones. And now is a good time for consolidation too. So I'm hearing a lot from people who are practicing archaeologists that they have the time to sit down and process data. For me, I'm spending a lot more time writing, catching up on writing, catching up on editing, which I would have had anyway. This year was a lot of sitting down in front of the computer for me. So a lot of my workflow hasn't been changed. I would have been sitting in front of the computer for most of this year anyway. But building online collaborations like this, so I'm really happy to get this idea from Tuklas and from Nayong Pilipinas on hosting conversations like these. I think having casual conversations like these are really important and really good. Just checking up on each other to just see how we are doing. I think that's understated, but I think very necessary. And now more so, I think with the inability to travel, I think there's going to be a lot more focus in local capacity building. And for us in SPAFA, where we are a regional center for capacity building, that's something that I'm thinking about too. How do I conduct regional trainings on a local level in this time where the trainers can't travel and the participants can't travel? So that's where I am. I just wanted to show something from my office on the note of cleaning up, because let's see, my desk is a mess, but also I've been finding weird stuff in my office that I don't know where it's from, but it's really cool. I have here a replica of the Trengganu stone, which is now randomly in my room. And then in another corner of the building, I found a replica of a Dongson drum. So I've claimed those. It's all plexiglass, by the way, it's not real. So, but they're mine now. And eventually, when the office is open again, I hope you can come and visit and see them. So that's where I am. Over to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Noel. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, Kate, Lim, and I were wondering also, like, it would be nice to have sort of like an informal sharing, because there are a lot of webinars out there and there are a lot of seminars, and it would be nice to kind of like talk, not really super personal, but at least we can just be a little bit more natural and less academic. But of course, it's still very educational. So thank you. I'll be sure to check those plexiglass stuff when we're all allowed to travel. Okay, so let's invite questions later after we've heard our other speakers. Our second speaker for today is Tipawan. Hi, she's also an archaeologist. She graduated her bachelor and master's degrees from the Faculty of Archaeology at Silpakorn University in Thailand. Her research interests include rock art, ancient settlement pattern, and the Banchan culture. So, Tipawan, take it away.
Hi, are you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and I think it's half 10 minutes, right?
Yes.
For speaks. Okay. First of all, I must say thank you to Nayong Pilipino Foundation and Tuklas Pilipinas Society for inviting me to join this talk. And first of all, now, like Noel said, the Thailand's under the circumstance of COVID-19 are better than 2 months ago, because the government lessens the lockdown and curfew, so we can go and stay the others area more than 2 months ago. But some the effects of the emergency decree are still become effective, that I will talk about this later. Before I will talk about the effects of the pandemics with my jobs, I will explain a little bit about the frameworks of fire department. And I will show you. Okay, everyone can see here? Can see that, right? Okay, about the frameworks of fire department, our organizations divides the divisions into 23 divisions. But from the slide, you will see number 1 to 10, the office are located in Bangkok. So that means most of them are work from home, but it's different from the underwater archaeology divisions and 12 regional office that must still work because our office are located in regional. And what is our duty under the regional office? We have a three main duty that we must do. The first thing that the regional office have the responsible for protect and conservation and maintenance, improvements or promote about the archaeological site and the knowledge to the society. And the second duty is we must study and manage archaeological sites and objects, as well as the operations of the country. National Museum also includes, is cover the intangible culture heritage, literatures and historical archive also. And the third duties of us is to support information and make or check the EIA report for the projects that are managed by other governments or other organizations or private company that they will, when they build dam or reservoir or mines or land use. And the third duty is cover around 50% of work in each day. So what happened when the Prime Minister issued the emergency decree on 26 March? It's changed our lifestyle and our work forever because we cannot go out of our office. For example, of this emergency decree, the people in Thailand are banned from 10 p.m. to 4 p.m. for contain the spread of coronavirus. And 26 types of business were closed, such as the mall, restaurant, hotel, and some public transportation, such as the domestic flight or bus that transfer from Bangkok to other province. And moreover, in some province or some district, if you come from the others area, especially from Bangkok, when you arrive at home, you must self-isolate at least 14 days. That means you cannot go out of your base from your office if you didn't want to home quarantine. And especially in my province, I am an archaeologist in the 8 regional office in Khon Kaen that located in the northeast of Thailand. In my province, the provincial governor has the announcement that all civil servants and government employees cannot go out of province. That means I cannot go anywhere and stay in the base office. And this is the maps of Thailand. In Thailand, we have a 77 province and we have the 12 regional office that are located in each regions. And the red point is my office, but this is my responsible area that covers 7 provinces. That means I cannot go do the works in other area because if I go out of Khon Kaen, when I come back, I must self-isolate or home quarantine 14 days. So what happened when after that, from these situations after the emergency decree, the regional office must change our duties and our lifestyle. The first thing that we must do is cancel all projects that have more than 5 participants. That means around 50% of our projects in this fiscal year must be canceled. However, in some cases, like excavations or the rescues, archaeology, we are still work, but we must change our process to do that. In some regional office, they are still running the excavations, but we change the process. Before the pandemic, we will employ local laborers or the villagers around 10 to 15 persons that come to help us for excavations per one piece around the area around T by T. We will employ around 10 to 15 villagers or local labor to help us. But now we must change because it will have more than 5 persons. So we will excavations by ourselves, by use archaeologists and use our officer to help us to excavations. And when we go to survey the archaeological site, we must go in only one day. It means we must wake up earlier and go in the early mornings and come back before 10 p.m. But it's very hard because if you see that the Thai picture that I showed you before, a responsible area is very big, and some archaeological site is far away from my office, more than 400 kilometers. That means you cannot go and go back by one day. So we must postpone our work, that we must go to stay overnight until the government will stop the lockdown. And however, I think after the pandemic is have something that is a good chance that all people that is interested in Thai archaeology or Thai cultures, that we can catch more information of Thai government more than the past, because after the lockdown, the Director General has an imperative to all divisions under the Fine Arts Department must publish the informations no late or articles on Fine Art Department platforms such as the Facebook page or website or book or journal and so on. And this is some of the below links is some of the main website and main page that you can follow us, because in each day we will update the new contents in every day, and most of them are the new informations like from excavations or from the new survey that never published before. So this is a good chance that everyone can follow fire department work and follow the news archaeological site that we found. One thing that is the good good advantage from the lockdown, because we have more times, because our works and our duty is lesser than, and we have more time to write a report or research. So if you have time, you can follow a fire department website. And this is, for example, from my office page on Facebook, that we will upload the new content in every week about the archaeological site or the result of excavations and some artifacts that keep in the storage of the National Museum. But now we have a free time, so we bring some artifacts or antiques in the storage to publish, so you can follow us. And like I told you, under the Fine Arts Department, we have a lot of the divisions. So some divisions, like an office of performing, they will have a live dancing that you can watch on Facebook on times, and it's very funny, and you can look, watch, or learn about the traditional dance also. And the last one that I will share is about the experience and the projects under the Fire Art Department. We call this project is the local volunteer to protect the cultural heritage. This project is set up around 30 years ago by Fire Art Department, and these volunteers are staying in every province, especially in the area that we have the ancient monument or important archaeological site. Now I think, I'm not sure about the numbers of volunteer, but I think we have more than 3,000 people that are volunteer of fire department that can help archaeologists and curators more than. This volunteer was trained about how to take care of the ancient remains, how to record and report about the conditions of the site. If it has something wrong, such as when the ancient building collapsed, when the archaeological site was looted by robber, or when we found a new site accidentally. For these reasons, in these situations of the pandemic, in my opinion, local volunteer is the good alternative plans or alternative choice to help archaeologists to monitor or survey the new site while we cannot go out of our office. So that is the last thing that I will share with all of you. And I think maybe in other countries, we will have the local volunteer same as us. And if you have the others experience about this, we can share together. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tipoan. That's great. I can only imagine how hard it is to excavate with no help from the local community and the laborers.
Yes.
We all know that archaeology is a collaboration work and
Yeah.
work in big groups. All right. Um, okay, thanks for that. We'll be getting questions and comments later. We will move on to our next friend, Akni Mokhtar. She is currently working as a researcher in Balai Archaeology, DI, in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. She finished her master's degree at Flinders University, Australia in 2019. Her main research interests are in maritime archaeology and the archaeology of Hindu and Buddhist remains. Hi, Agni. Thanks for being here.
Hi Tash, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right,
We
cool.
can hear you.
So yeah, good afternoon everyone. It's so nice to see you all. And first of all, I'd like to thank Tuklas, of course, and also Nayong Pilipino for having this talk. And I'm not sharing too much this afternoon, but just a little bit about what happened in Indonesia, especially for the archaeology sector during this pandemic. But about how the improvement of a COVID-19 situation in Indonesia, it has not getting better yet. So yeah, we'll see. I have several slides. I'll try to share them here.
Yes.
All right, cool. So just a bit overview. I'm just gonna give a brief description about who deal with archaeology in Indonesia, and then moving on to the current condition. And I will focus a bit on archaeological research just because I work in a research institution. So yeah, well, in Indonesia, of course, I believe also happened in many countries. We have like research, conservation, preservation, and education related to archaeology, but there are several institutions and organizations deal with all of this. So sometimes the function of one institution a bit overlaps with another institution. And of course, we have government institution and private organizations. And we have national government and local government because we have 34 provinces in Indonesia. And then for private organizations, we have museum, consultant agency, and also groups and communities. In terms of consultant agency, is not yet as developed as, probably the agencies in other countries, but it's a good start. And they work closely with the government institutions. And I will focus on the national government just because simply I work for the national government, and it will be a bit wrong if I talk about other institutions. This is just several institutions under the Ministry of Education and Cultures. And if we are talking about underwater heritage, we have to talk about another ministry, the Marine and Fisheries, and things get more complicated. So for this afternoon, I just focus on the Ministry of Education and Culture. There's one research center and 10 branches. I am here. And also we have 6 universities, teach archaeology subjects. And also there's one big directorate with 12 preservation offices, 7 museums, and 2 specialty conservation offices. And these are just the general response to the pandemic outbreak. So we basically work from home since late March, and the time range also has been extended 3 times, I guess. So at this time, we will stay at home until at least the end of this month also. And temporary closure of museums and heritage places, of course. And this closure has a big impact, especially for people working on tourism sectors also. And then postpone and cancel conferences. People at the universities started distance classes. And as I believe many of you experience it, we have so many online events, seminar, talk show. It's getting a bit overwhelming, probably. And then, of course, the higher number of social media engagement. And for research, last year we have like 118 titles of research, and for this year we actually have 104 titles. The list over here is just about the research center and the 10 branch offices dealing with the number of different research. But of course, all these research are postponed until next year. No field work probably at all for this year. But now, so we move on to desk study. So the office asks us to focus on analyzing the artifacts in the laboratory, doing the literature study, and studying the archive, and etc., and things like that. And for some contemplation, I think it's just, it's a bit daunting for archaeologists to kind of like stay at home and can't go to the field. But it's actually, it is a good time to kind of like write more articles. I don't know about you, but many times in our office, we are so overwhelmed about the number of field work that we have to do. And of course, in consequence, the number of report that we have to write. Sometimes we postpone the articles. So yeah, I think it is a good time to kind of like focus more on writing the articles. And I think you will agree it will be good to have like more Southeast Asian archaeology articles by Southeast Asian. And also to engage in more advanced technology if you can. If you are as resourceful as Noel, probably you can work on advanced technology thing. And to post more cool pictures on social media, just open all your folders and look for cool pictures. And of course, to promote previous works, because sometimes people will ask kind of like, what are you doing? I'm an archaeologist. Oh, what are you doing? And it's like, it's the same question. So we have to kind of like promote our work continuously. And to clean the scuba gears for you all divers out there. And to sharpen the trolls, of course. I mean, it's a hard time for everyone, but again, if you cannot do the great things, just do small things in a great way. I think that's it. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me to clean my scuba gear. I think I have to check on that. I think I need a new BC by now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Agni.
No worries.
Before we move on to our next speaker, I'd just like to say hi again to our viewers. And if you have any questions, you can just type them down in the comment section, and we'll do our best to address them when all of our speakers have shared their thoughts. So thank you. Our fourth speaker is JC Salon. He graduated Bachelor of Arts in Sociology Anthropology at Xavier University Ateneo de Cagayan. He worked at Museo de Oro at Xavier University as laboratory assistant in 2014 and is currently at the Cagayan de Oro City Museum and Heritage Studies Center as officer in charge since 2016. He is a member of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, Local History Committee Network, and a board member of the Mindanao Association of Museums. His current research projects are the ethnographic survey of the Matigsalug Manobo and the evolution. So hello, fellow Filipino, but all the way down in Mindanao right now.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nayong Pilipino Foundation and Tuklas for this opportunity for me to share our situation here in Mindanao, at least in Cagayan de Oro. Well, I have to apologize. I wasn't able to make some slides since the museum is under the LGU, and then during situations like disbursement of some financial aid and other things, we often get pulled out, so it's quite tiring after the day. But anyway, I'll do my best in my current status. Actually, the City Museum serves as a secretariat to the Cagayan de Oro Historical and Cultural Heritage Commission. So, and one of our supposedly plans prior to the pandemic, we already had we were actually preparing for certain activities, especially one of which being our Charter Day. It's going to be our 70th Charter Day, Cagayan de Oro City, and then Independence Day. This is actually called this season will be called Himugso. It's because 12th being Independence Day, and then the 15th being the City Charter Day. So in between, we're filling that up with activities related to local history and heritage. So yes, and well, also aside from that, we've been checking or monitoring or identifying heritage sites in around the city and the urban area, since I see it as rather the growth of the city is becoming a little bit of a concern for example, buildings, houses that are over 50 years old, and we have to at the very least collect, take photos, and then of course with the consent and support of the residents, so we can actually endorse sort of a plan for the city to somehow integrate them in urban development. And well, uh, actually, the main objective of the museum is to be, well, I wanted it to be the focal, the place, the center for Cagayan de Oro studies. So because there's been a concern among individuals who would want to learn about our local history, that they have to move from offices, the places that seem, you know, it's not the right place where you would learn about local history. So we decided to get, for example, if you want to learn something local history that that could that, well, something that the LGU is involved. So well, we have codified ordinances for that, and then that could be useful as a reference. And then instead of going to the office where you have it, you can access it here, since this is the museum and it talks about, and those historical materials are actually speak about how the government ran at the time, and how certain projects or certain activities that were done at the time. For example, and then informations about, let's say, what about people who would want to know about the history of the name place, the areas here, the barangay, for example. Why is it called that type of barangay? So for the museum, we had to the museum collects that information from the offices, like we have that has them, you know, and then here we can actually provide that to whoever wants to know. See, yun siya. So what else? So among other things, and also we're actually partnering with our indigenous people here, the Higaunon. There are about 16 barangays, 16 villages that are recognized as, it has a significant amount of Higaunon indigenous people. So we're partnering with them, especially during events such as the October, the Indigenous Peoples Month. And at the same time, we're also trying to partner with them in collecting folklore and also understanding practices, rituals, etc. Then we're storing them here for future for future exhibits. So as I mentioned earlier, during the pandemic, well, the city had to limit people from going out. We were in quarantine, so, and then the museum, of course, had to close, since one of its main functions is to for visitors and tourists to come in. So we had to close that, and we have to close the museum until further notice. However, work is still ongoing, as it was stipulated by the city mayor. So when it comes to work from home, we can only have one staff who can carry the work home, since it can be done through the internet and the software. All other works are more, well, hands-on. We're actually continuing. Actually, there are some collections that we recently have that we are recording, accessioning, and then at the same time, we are planning of expanding our exhibits as well, at least to make it more articulate and more detailed when it comes to our exhibits. And hopefully we can, hopefully when this is over, we can actually integrate, or rather somehow morph, how would you phrase it, the plans, to activities on how to still showcase them, how to push through with plans without breaking quarantine protocol, whatnot. And then we're actually observing we're observing the current the flow of the social media on how the museum can enter as really a Facebook page or for us for this time to share local heritage to the public, and especially now that uh, schools are starting, if I'm not mistaken, but it's uh, it's mostly online, or a big chunk of it is online. So how do we supplement that, since they could not see the artifacts physically? So at least they could learn from our local history via, say, these social media platforms. And then also and so that we're studying that, because it's not there are local individuals who actually have who have um, knowledge on local history, certain parts, and then they're actually quite active in sharing them. So well, somehow we will see how we can go through, and how can uh, coincide with that, partner with that, and then hope. Well, it's a lot of um, trial and error as of now, as how things will go from here. Siya. What else? So far, here again, for opportunities, for us here at the museum, well, or what you call the silver lining of this phenomenon is that well, we become more focused on on the work here, like what was said earlier, that we found some we discovered more in the museum, that we are just here, and not just with no visitors. Our focus is solely on in the museum, the collection. So well, we begin to find more details in the work that we do, and then hence the plans now of trying to of digitizing our museum collections. Yeah. So yeah, so far that's it for me.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
JT.
Thank you.
Thank you also for being a public servant in disbursing financial aid to your community. You're not only
Yeah.
an officer in charge of a museum, but you also help people with financial aid. Thank you.
Thank you.
So last but not the least, we'll be hearing from Dr. John Peterson. He is an archaeologist and an anthropologist who has worked in the Philippines and the Pacific for the past 20 years. He received his PhD in anthropology from the University of Texas at Austin in 1993 and taught at the University of Texas at El Paso, as well as having conducted research and compliance archaeology in the American Southwest, northern Mexico, Texas, with brief stints in Brazzaville, Congo, Ecuador, the Jiangxi province in China. John is a team member of the History Flight Incorporated, an organization dedicated to the search and recovery of missing American servicemen from World War II, the president and expert member of the International Committee for Archaeology Heritage Management, a scientific committee supporting ICOMOS and the World Heritage Committee, and a faculty member at San Carlos University in Cebu. He was also a faculty at University of Guam.
So yeah, that was not in the written bio, and I think that's important to note. Yes, I was in Guam for about 12 years, and partly with the Micronesian Area Research Center, but then doing more administrative work for research and graduate studies. Let's see, there we go. Okay, so what I'm not going to talk about Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, I just wanted to show a couple of slides about some tools that we're trying to develop, and I think these might be of interest to everybody because I hear everybody talking about how now is a great time for us to sharpen our trowels, but also to come up with some new ways of organizing our data and thinking about our data. And there's a project that we're doing at University of San Carlos, initiated by the chair, Laila Labajo of Department of Anthropology, Sociology, and History, visiting local government units in the Visayas and working on cultural heritage inventories as required by the Cultural Heritage Act of 2008 or 9. I think the implementational rules were in 2009. So we were very, very fortunate to partner with the municipality of Burawan in Leyte, and we were just in the middle of getting a project going and in fact planned in June to go back for a field school. Some of you know about the project. I'll briefly talk about it here, but I want to show you some tools that we want to incorporate into that kind of work, and this is one in particular here that I'm really excited about, but I haven't a clue how to do it myself. People like Kate Lim are really good at this stuff, but I'm going to have to depend upon some helpers. Let's see. There we go. Oops, went too far. Okay. Extent heritage consultants in Australia have offered to help us. I've only had a chance to initiate this discussions with Burawan and with the department to develop a GIS storyboard for Burawan. This I think will be a really great tool for not only organizing our research, organizing historic maps, organizing data from the area, organizing environmental information. This project in Annapolis is a great example of a GIS storyboard. ArcGIS, of course, the granddaddy of all this GIS work, has started this project and now marketed. If you go to their websites, you'll be able to see how they are beginning to, they're trying to promote the development of these GIS storyboards all over the place. And it works really well for heritage resources. You can see here that there are many elements that can be brought into this, including live videos and so forth. And I invite you to go visit this site. This will change. You saw a minute ago the URL. I'll put it up again. I'm not very successful. There we go. Okay, here's the URL for that Annapolis Seaport GIS storyboard. It's a fabulous site, and I think you'll all have lots and lots of ideas about how you can use that in your own archaeological documentation. But the other thing is that it becomes a tool for sharing with the community, and not just locally in maybe a local museum or a local video format, for example, but also online and therefore globally, this can be shared. So it can become a really integral part of community education, which is what these LGU cultural heritage inventories are really all about. So they really have at least three kinds of major emphases. One of those is engagement. The idea that we as archaeologists aren't aloof from the community, and we're not just the expert scientists, documenters and so forth, but that we can become engaged and help draw out from within the community lots of knowledge sources that otherwise might not be known or might not be shared amongst everyone else in the community. Oral history, of course, is a great tool family histories, which can be elicited very quickly. And those of you that work in communities, you know how people love to talk about their family histories. And once you get them started, it's endless. It's wonderfully fascinating and endless. And then, of course, one must be careful not to limit it to some narrow slices of life. We used to go into communities and just talk to the educated people or the university people or the professionals, because they were more perhaps interested in the intellectual sides of these things. But more and more, we find that some of the most authentic heritage knowledge comes from people throughout the community. And so it's really important to go into the community and identify community heritage leaders. And often that can start with the mayor or those in governance that are particularly responsible for heritage preservation and conservation. So the first stage would be engagement, to get involved with the community and make it known to them that it's their project, it's their heritage, it's their history, not ours. We're here to facilitate. In some areas, some more esoteric areas like archaeology, yes, we do have some skills and some experience that can help sort of guide finding information and knowledge from archaeological resources. But I think we have the obligation to share that in meaningful ways with the community and to try to show, and I think through these GIS storyboards, they're excellent ways to show, for example, how sea level change, which can be depicted in a GIS storyboard, can influence where the shorelines were a few thousand years ago, therefore where the archaeological sites were, and then what kind of sites those were relative to sites today. These are fascinating things. We find people really rise to these and quickly appreciate them. So evidence, of course, is one of the next major things, and that's where I think we do have some something to contribute. But even so, when we do archaeological surveys, we tend to walk, especially if you follow the American model, the North American model, you walk in these 10-meter separate transects and try to completely cover an area. But of course, if you're walking through sugarcane fields, you can't see the ground anyway, so it gets kind of silly. We've found in the Philippines one of the most effective means of survey is informant survey. You go to the local sari-sari, hang out with farmers, have a beer, buy some sodas or some coffee, and you can sit there and probably find out more about the really significant sites within an hour or so of talking there with local informants like farmers and others, than lots and lots of sort of pointless walking across a landscape that's been churned up and turned over many, many times over the last few hundred years. And then, of course, archival history, which can turn up things like maps, various kinds of documents. The Augustinian and Jesuit histories of the region, for example, are very detailed records. Maybe JC can help us with some of that with the National Historical Commission, because they have researchers like him who can help LGUs with their local research projects. And then third, exhibition, the GIS storyboard. I think it's a fabulous tool. Extent, it's a public service offer on their part. They're willing to do the work with the GIS. I have very little skills in that area, but I know how to think about what is needed, I think, and their people can help put it into reality. It can be used in classrooms. It can be used in a little museum exhibit. It can be used online. Of course, also the other way to get kind of local communities, and all of you know this, but it's involved is through classrooms, taking students on tours, and public archaeology, getting people out there and actually digging. We did a project in New Mexico in the Jemez Pueblo several years ago, where we were asked by a local high school teacher if his students could come out and actually work on the project. We said, well, sure, of course. It was a federally funded project, but it was fine. The Forest Service was okay with it. These high school kids began doing screening on the screen, and they were finding all kinds of things. After a while, we began to realize that there were many categories of things than we had any inkling were significant to the Jemez people. Of course, the pottery and the chipped stone and so forth, but also different colors and sizes of pebbles. And as we sat down and worked with the students, they showed us how significant those were in various ways. It was a really exciting project. And that all kind of made it into the final report. But the most important part was getting kids involved in that history, that local history. So back to Borawan. one of the things we found in the two times we've been there is the walls and the floor of what the locals in this barrio said was, they said, the first church in Burawan. And most people in the city would tell us, well, the first church was this other larger structure up in the city near the city hall. But yes, they knew that some of the local residents here believed this was the first church. We went back through one source of records so far, the Augustinian records from the Breves Reseños, and found an 1804 parish constructed by the Jesuits that pretty much matches the description of this one, a courtyard wall, some interior structures. So we may have a fantastic opportunity here to examine not only in local community history, but also maybe through some excavation, a very early parish or visita in the region. Later then we learned from Raleigh, Borinaga and some others that this actually may have been the way he put it was the Augustinians weren't necessarily inclusive. They weren't necessarily straightforward about some of the earlier Jesuit structures in the area. Of course, the Jesuits were dispelled from the Philippines in 1759, but before that, according to Raleigh, they may actually have also had visitas, and this may have been an even earlier Jesuit visita. So we're eager to learn more about that, and we're encouraging the municipality to contact NHC to see if we can get some archival support to learn about Jesuit sources in the National Archives here. Anyway, those are the kinds of things that we can do now while we're down. We can at least think about them. If the National Archives isn't open, at least we are poised and ready to go into action. But these are also the kinds of things, as we learn them, we can begin to construct for things like the GIS storyboard. So of course, on every site, there are many users, including, of course, the farmers. This pig might get moved out if we get into some active projects here, but for now, he's probably the main owner of this corner anyway. And then finally, I wanted to, partly because that Annapolis storyboard was really set up to kind of analyze and assess climate change vulnerabilities and adaptations for Annapolis. I kind of thought that I'd share these things about the climate change investigation model. Some of you do this work already that are listening to this, but I find it to be a possibly really useful method that we could transfer or apply to archaeological or cultural heritage management. First of all, if you do an investigation for climate change in any community, you would do an assessment of vulnerability first, where basically you're looking for what the resources are, but then how they might be impacted by a particular climate change risk, or if we want to be more general, any kind of disaster, hazard, or even development risk. So for example, sea level change might have an impact on some areas and not on others. Typhoons, obviously, especially in Leyte, the Hayang was dead center on Burawan and Tacloban. But first of all, doing a detailed study, characterizing what's there, and then trying to look at how it might be vulnerable to different kinds of impacts. Then second, trying to come up with practices to promote resilience. And this is all about these next two terms, sustainability and transformability. And the purpose of this is to see how, as communities, there's a sustainable plan for the future. Burawan has a tremendous water resources, the Marabong River and a couple of other rivers flowing right into Burawan. The mountains around it's a huge, beautiful natural area. The whole area should be a geopark, I think, actually. Maybe that's in the works. But it has tremendous resources, not to mention the people. For them to maintain their sustainability in the age of the coronavirus has required them getting into quarantine status, which they've now begun to relax just slightly. I think the word just came out today. But they've had hardly any cases. It's a very rural area with low population density. So they have a lot to work with, in contrast to some of the urban cores where we have great heritage resources, but we don't have as much control over the populations and the environment around it. And then last, of course, transformability. How can we actually change this environment, or of course, we can't speak really of mitigation much for climate change because we haven't been able to adjust to the lower inputs of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Interesting, some of you know we've actually reduced carbon dioxide, and it could have a slight dent in the total, but it's already gone so far that we may be not able to really pull that back, or at least reverse it. But anyway, we want to be able to work within communities to build sustainability, and also to find ways we can change things, but without fundamentally altering the heritage fabric of the communities. So in very short, these are things I've been trying to work with the help of this extent group and all their GIS staff, and we hope to get back in the field. I know we're all really eager to get back into the field as quickly as possible. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All
Did
right.
I clear the screen?
Yes, you have. Thank you so much. All right. So thanks, guys, again. Let me just share some comments that have been sent to us in our Facebook page. Somebody says it's right that maybe it's a good time for us to be writing about being able to focus on the objects and the collections in the museum and devote time to digitization projects without the distraction of some museum visitors. That's from Natalie Pearson. And Dr. Grace Barreto Tesoro of ASP also said that maybe digitization should be a major focus while waiting for this pandemic to end. And yeah, everyone has been saying wonderful updates. It's nice. Someone reacted to Agni saying more Southeast Asian archaeology by Southeast Asians. So yeah, thank you for those who commented. You can keep asking us questions. We've written them down and we're getting ready to answer them. And while we're doing that, I will be giving the mic over to Patricia.
Firstly, I want to thank all the speakers and to thank Tuklas Pilipinas for organizing and hosting the session. It's been really interesting, I think, hearing everyone's perspectives around Southeast Asia and of course here locally. I think this talk has just given all of us like a lot to think about on the role of archaeology and what we can do during this pandemic. You know, like archaeology as a field is very highly dependent on travel and field work, especially working with local communities. So being stuck working at home is a challenge, and of course travel is limited. So it's really interesting, and I agree with what everyone's been talking about when it comes to like focusing on organizing and collecting our data, writing our articles. I think it was Tipo one who mentioned like posting information online, like writing articles, and it's just and sharing it with the public. And I think that's really something we can do now, since we can't really go out as much as we want to. What else? Yeah, like I said, and also like we could also focus mostly, I mean, it's been touched, I think, by several speakers, you know, developing more content for other people to sort of get access to, mostly digital content, things like virtual tours, or just having more information for the public, especially those who are interested in archaeology and cultural heritage. Yeah, like I said, we have a lot to think about, and talks like this is really, I think, helpful in like helping us sort of figure out, you know, this is not a situation we've like thought about for a really long time, or like how to handle a pandemic. So it's really, I think, important for us to have these talks to figure out what our roles are in archaeology and in cultural education. I do have one question, I think, and this is for everyone. since we mostly focus on what we can do in terms of like working on our data and writing articles and the digital, this pandemic is going to end. And while we've like rescheduled a lot of like field works for like next year, we don't know when we're going to have a vaccine, and we don't know when like normal is going to happen. Like, do you think, is there a need to sort of rethink how we do field work or excavations, or how we work with local communities to avoid like further transmission? Or I don't know, does my question make sense? But yes.
Yeah, it really does. Actually, it's related to one of the questions that our friend from Indonesia wrote, is Shinatria. He said that what do we do what if we never go back to normal?
Yeah.
I mean, several years, how would archaeology deal with it, or what is the new normal for archaeology? And I suppose a lot of us, everyone in this chat room is we work with local communities, and that's really our advocacy, our thrust is working with local communities. And I mean, if we're not allowed to collaborate or go there, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's something we really have to think about. I think moving forward.
With that, maybe that could be the first question that we'd like to answer and address. For me, I think, well, just to start, for me, I think one more thing that we need to be ready with is the fact that in a lot of rural areas in developing nations, and there's not really good internet. And if we really want to, get our publications across or our content across, we'd also have to think about other ways to share, and not just through the internet. I think that's one of the things that I want to bring up. But I think Tipawan is ready to answer the question.
Yes, I will ask some questions. I see it's have a person that asks, do you think the increase engage of the local volunteer ethics due to the COVID will increase their heritage capacity and empower them to care more heritage? I will talk a little bit about in Thailand. In Thailand, we have a law that we empower to the local organizations that they have the opportunity to take care of their own cultural heritage. But the opportunity that they will get, or it must be controlled by the under the legal frameworks of the Acts on Ancient Monuments, Antiques, and Objects of Art and National Museums. This act will control the power that the local organizations or the local people can do or can take care of their own cultural heritage. And I think after these situations, because fire department have the directly contacts with the local volunteer, so we can talk with them and we can connections with them in all times when they have a problem. So I think it is a good idea that every country that can use these projects to adapt with your country. And I think it's not too much empower that we give to them, because in Thailand, our traditional, we have a traditional that we respect the ancient monument, and most of them are scared, like a ghost or superpower behind the ancient monuments. So it's not too much empower that we give to them. I think I'm not sure that is right for answer the questions or not. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tipawan, for. I hope that answers. If I'm not mistaken, that was a colleague from the Philippines. No. Who asked that question? Ah, it was Cliff. It was Cliff's question. I see. Okay. Would anyone else? Sorry, Kate.
Acne also would like to say something about that.
Oh, okay. Okay, Agni.
All right, thanks, Tash and Kate. Not particularly about the same questions, but probably about some other questions. The first about Patricia's questions in related to Sinatria's question, my fellow archaeologist from Indonesia. So yeah, the new archaeology for, I don't know, several years ahead. I think as archaeologists, we always kind of like worship fieldwork a little bit too much because, you know, we always get excited about fieldwork and everything. But sometimes we forgot that this is just a tiny part of our work, of our duty. You know, after that, we have to write reports and more importantly, kind of like write interpretation and narration and history also that we have to kind of like communicate them with the community. So I don't know, I think just speaking of Indonesian context, if we go without excavation for like 3 or 4 years, I think we still have plenty of data to analyze, to interpret, and I'm not worried at all. And so for the second question from Shu, I guess, from the Singapore about the budget. Again, I only can say from Indonesian perspective, but this year the budget for archaeology research already down to 1/3 of the normal budget. So yeah, we just focus on the study again. I think it's just we have to be creative on like how much budget we have, and of course the more budget sounds better, but probably not. It's not necessarily always the case. And also a very interesting question about people without the internet. Tasha also mentioned it earlier. Yeah, I agree because we are so very different with other regions in the world where many people are still struggling with no internet at all. Again, community engagement is important. It's like, for example, like several office in Indonesia, we kind of like produce books about archaeology, but for children. So it's like comics, like short comics and everything. And also a lot of simple like poster that can be, you know, put on public spaces and everything. Again, if we are talking about budget, we cannot produce a lot of books, etc. But we already kind of like put it online. Hopefully, if we are working together with local communities, someone with the internet access in one community can download the book and then, you know, probably reprint it and like circulate the books to other people in those communities. It's not I don't know, it's not ideal, but I think it's one thing that we can do. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Agni. I think next up is Noel.
Yeah, just to briefly chime in with what Agni mentioned too, I'm very sure that all of us are going to get an economic hit. And it's not just archaeology, it's everyone's economies are down. So everyone is going to have some sort of budget cuts, no matter which industry you are. And you know, as archaeologists, we shouldn't be surprised. We're pretty much used to it anyway. Yeah, I was also thinking about the access to internet in this part of the world. And I'm also thinking that actually in this part of the world, more people are connected to the internet via their phones than they are to the computer. And even for rural areas, you may not have a computer, but you still access knowledge through your phone. And so maybe the way we communicate our results has to match those mediums too. I'm thinking about how Alison Carter, she had a really good activity with her students about embedding archaeological knowledge in memes. So interesting and so nuanced, because memes can keep so much nuances and arguments in one picture or two pictures, and that might be a way. Memes are so easy to understand, and you don't have to read a 10-page paper. You can just see a picture and know what exactly the argument is about, and that might be a way to just change the way we communicate to the public these days.
I agree with you on the memes part. There's this public Facebook group called Archaeology Jokes and Memes. And I mean, it's the most ridiculous stuff are sent there, but it kind of like, it gives you, for example, a lot of it, I think because a lot of them are from the UK, so a lot of it is more related to Roman archaeology. But I mean, I think we all have a general idea of the Roman Empire.
Yeah. I wanted to continue on what you were saying, Tasha, because you were looking in, and also Noel, about the online thing. But it's also a good opportunity to look into other communication platforms that we're not really used to looking at, like, for example, television. So I think, Tasha, you were talking about this a while ago, because there was a study in the Philippines that 80% of the Filipinos still get their news of this pandemic through the television. So it's really nice to look into those popular mediums that they used before, and even radio. But I don't know how archaeologists feel about these things using other communication platforms that were used before other than online. But I think it's something interesting and exciting to look into. I don't know if somebody or anyone here is also looking into that platform. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe after this we can have another session and discuss other platforms or other media where we can share our knowledge or share our results to the public, and we can get into a technical working group as well if we're really up for it. Uh, um, yeah, as anyone, maybe someone else has a reaction to this as well. Okay, I think we have another question. Thank you all for your wonderful presentations. I would like to ask your opinion on what social values would archaeology foster through cultural education now and after the pandemic? Interesting question.
Can you repeat that again, Tash? Sorry.
What social values would archaeology foster through cultural education now and after the pandemic?
Wow. John, maybe you want to answer that.
I mean, there's some truisms about that, like, you know, if we don't remember the past, we can't manage in the future and all these things. But I think it's, yeah, actually, if people think about the Spanish flu and previous flu epidemic, it really helps to put into what we're going through now. This can seem like the end of the world, and yet look at periods previously 100 years ago, we'll see that it's part of kind of more normalcy than we kind of want to admit. So if archaeology, which gives us deep history, can help contribute to that knowledge, for example, what the Giwan excavations where they were digging a cemetery with, they thought were cholera victims, I think, gives people in that community, but also nationwide, gives people a really keen sense of that these are parts of life, parts of social history. So I think archaeology can play a huge role, and that's something we can incorporate into all of our interpretations within particular areas. Thank you.
Thanks. I think right now, also, if I could also share an opinion, because we were also discussing this with other Filipino archaeologists, and how can we as archaeologists, or how can we as cultural workers be more of direct help? Like, how can we be more? How can we help more directly in this pandemic? Like, I mean, not just talking about donation drives or what, why, or but also like how I think it's related to what social values would archaeology foster through cultural education during or after this pandemic, because it's very much related of what jobs can we do in the limited space, in the limited means that we have. And I really think one job is still, and it's very important, it's still the recording of the events right now. And I mean, we're living history, and we can record that. Let's leave, I don't know, probably leave material evidence for 100 years from now about this pandemic. I don't know, but I think that as keepers and sharers of history, that's our job. We should record this, and to follow John's point, I mean, to not forget the past, and like how can we help people remember? I think that's one of the things, that one of the social values we can share is remembering. And by remembering, I hope that people will understand, and by understanding there's empathy, and then there's more consideration and respect, and hopefully people are more careful. Because if it's, I also read an article about the number one thing that America learned, the United States learned from the Spanish influenza in, was it 1918? I forget, but what they learned was that the most important thing that the government should be having or should be spreading through society is trust and transparency. And a lot of times, I think a lot of people in different countries are doubting, sometimes doubting government statements or doubting reports, or learning that sometimes it's fake news because it's just being shared in social media. And I think that's a good social value to foster as archaeologists or as cultural workers, is let's try to help people read more critically, get news more critically, so that they can also learn how to trust or how not to trust the reports that are being sent. I think yeah. Does anyone else want to share or answer any of the questions that have been posted?
Maybe we can ask JC about the museum work right now in Cagayan de Oro. Like, how about the status of the artifacts there, or what do you do there now? I mean, do you visit it? Do you keep your air cons open, or how do you?
There right now.
I'm here.
I'm worried about some of the artifacts or even the historical documents that are important that are in museums. So how are we keeping them if if we have to be physically distant from these offices as well?
Well, the artifacts and the collections are fine. This is one of the advantages of the LGU not suspending the work entirely for all of the offices of the LGU. So we get to report to the office and we get to maintain the art and the air quality. Mm. And as of now, uh, I'm reviewing. Well, we're reviewing the accession of the collection, uh, trying to make sure that everything is in detail and accurate. At the same time, I also jump from there to the. I'm working on a guide, which would resonate with a exhibit soon. Uh, yeah, so it's quite lengthy, and so far everything is it gives us the time to check if there are some I don't know accumulation whatsoever, if there are any concerns with regards to the collection. Um, uh, so so it's really focused on right now we're really focused on the collection that we have, and trying and well, it gives us more opportunity to brainstorm more on how to move forward from here. And then if I could if I remember well, relating to the earlier question with regards to the limitations of access to, for example, internet, for example, how do we reach out to communities or areas? We did have a plan to extend exhibits in malls. Supposedly, we have one, two, three. We have about 5 malls in the city, and we're planning to during the event, the heritage event, the Himugso. We call it Himugso. It's a birthing. We were planning to expand the exhibits there. Each mall has a different theme of local history, and then also prior to that, I was able to visit a rolling exhibit that was organized from an organization from Japan, uh, that we only need um, they were crafting these small boxes that have small artifacts. Basically, it's an artifact and a caption or description of the artifact relating to history, and then it's written in the local language, English and local language. And then it's interesting because well, that we could use that if we are in the, it's probably we could find a way um, to use that, bringing it to the far-flung communities, in order for them to learn about to disseminate information on heritage by the use of what's available. If there's we could use the barangay hall or the school, and we need a classroom. And then, of course, in order to not to break protocol, we would limit people from entering. We would follow the necessary things to avoid infection. So yeah, so that's one of the things that is well running through my mind as of while the session is ongoing. But going back, well, we're still up and running, although we're not open to visitors. Our staff here are also working on administrative documents, And also, we are, aside from the artifacts, also archival materials are being accessioned as well, and then categorized. So yeah, so that's it so far.
Okay, JT, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Siguro, like, well, like what I said, no, I think the next session or the next meeting, if you still want to be part of this, we can discuss other media, help each other out, um, to to get our messages across to the public. So sadly, actually, we already extended a few minutes, but sadly, we really have to end. And yes, I'm really glad to be seeing everyone, and thank you for everyone watching. Before we end, I would like to introduce Attorney Kay Malilong. She is the person who connected all of us or made sure that this talk happened. Thank you, Attorney Kay. She's the Executive Director of Nayong Pilipino.
Hi, everyone. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining our Umpukan. So Nayong Pilipino really wants to push its mandate of being a research institution for culture and the arts. And archaeology is really a field that we should be promoting more. There's so many stories that we don't know about the Philippines and Southeast Asia. And it's really comforting to see that there are experts all over Southeast Asia doing good work. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your stories and your hopes with us. So as we navigate this pandemic, and there's so many things that we don't know, all of us are still trying to figure out what to do. I hope we can continue working together, figuring out solutions for cultural workers to be, yes, to contribute with our skills and our knowledge to help us get through this experience. So thank you very much. Thank you, Tuklas, and everyone who joined.
Thank you, Attorney Kay. Hopefully this isn't the last meeting. We can always have another session. I will now be passing this over to Kate Lim for some
Hello.
final words.
Some final words. Okay. I think my whole reflection in this is, as like for us as archaeologists, our first or our default procedure is really to do research. And as researchers, I think every one of us has backlog for the past few years of doing from collecting data, and we're so used to all these ideas being generated with a lot of our fieldworks and literature review. So while it is quite difficult at this time, mentally or emotionally, there are other. I think the key to this is to go through this is to collaborate and partner with each other, like with us archaeologists and even the creative sector. We've been discussing about what creative platforms we can use, and I think some may not go beyond what they are using at the moment. But if we look into the other creative industries, maybe we can partner and look into those possibilities. It's also interesting to note that we've been talking about all these public goods like the budget, the internet, the television, or old forms of communicating. And I think this is also the time that at the end of the day, even if we say that, okay, these are the things that we want to look into, or as cultural workers, if we don't urge the government or even the private sector or all of us to work together to really look into ways on how we can combat a pandemic like this, then I think all of us will suffer from the consequences. So it's not just we. I think we at the end of the day we need to go beyond our discipline and look into ways of how do we partner, how do we survive this without being alone in this world. And with that, I think I would like to thank again our speakers. Even with a short notice, we were able to get all of you. I think we want to push forward another session, maybe look into more sharing of ideas. I think it's also high time that we publish to the public what we've been talking about in conferences or in academic journals. And I think a lot of people are really interested in the data that we've produced and to update everyone. So I think that this will be a good partnership also with Nayong Pilipino Foundation. And now that we've seen the efforts from the Southeast Asian neighbors, hopefully we can organize more of something like this and see how
And
it can,
capacity building stuff.
yeah.
Stuff.
So I and thank you so much, Attorney Kay, Patricia, and bless CJ and Leon for hosting us.
Thank
And
you,
Tash.
thank you, Nayong Filipino. Thank you to everyone who watched us. We tried to read all your questions. Thank you for all the comments. We will be,
Suggestions, Tash. They can just email us or
yes,
send a message if they want
send
to
us.
collab. Yeah.
Yes, you can message the Nayong Filipino Foundation Facebook page, right, Attorney? Right, Patricia? If you have any questions, you can also message us in the Tuklas page. Thank you, and we hope to see you again. Stay tuned.